Greetings and welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to head over to officehours.global to learn a little bit more about what we do here. Our first hour is on media and virtual production. Our second hour is typically something that we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we'll be talking about YouTube marketing, going beyond just uploading content, but some strategies that you can use to grow your business as well. And to learn more about what's happening for the rest of the week and to see our schedule, go to officehours.global. And producers, this is a great time for you to post any questions that you have for the first hour or for the second hour. And you know what? Let's get into the show.
Our first question this morning comes from Roy Myers in Bel Air, Maryland, and he says, my Mac icon stopped showing during preview, and he tried a bunch of things. He lists looking it up on Mac Rumors, thumbnails not showing, and he also checked quit Apple Quick Look. He quit thumbnails, agent process, forced quit the Finder, restarted, worked once, but now no joy. Wonders if anybody has any ideas to help him.
Jason?
This is probably something about Quick Look and the way that your indexing is working. So I would drag the entire hard drive into don't index and then pull it back out, and that'll force a reindex. There's also a way to do this through the command line.
Alex?
Yeah, I've been having the same problem with QuickTime files of all things. So the QuickTime files aren't showing up in my desktop. And I will admit, I'm just confirming. I don't have an answer yet because I haven't had really time to dig into it too much, but I'm confirming that my QuickTime files are now they're showing previews. So I restarted a bunch of times, and it seems to now show previews this morning. But for a couple weeks, my QuickTime files were just coming up as QuickTime and no image. And I do think that it has to do with what Jason talked about as the caching, and you may want to force a recache to see if it will cache those. What probably is happening is somehow it's identifying itself as already cached, and then it is then not actually happening. But yeah, it seems to be a Monterey issue. I would assume that you're on Monterey. I haven't ever seen it before.
Next question.
Next one comes from Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Graham says, looking to specify a video tripod for church, and this, he has a link there, looks to be a good deal. I'm sorry.
I think it got managed.
Yeah, something got sent around. So anyway, we're
hold
Graham.
On 1 second. We'll bring it up.
Okay.
Here, hold on. Let's see if we can get that sorted out again. Okay, there we go. Try that again.
There we go.
Okay, so what are the key features to look for in a fluid head? And he has the link there.
Alex?
Yeah, I would look at the I think Small HD now has a tripod out that they've been talking about, and at the same price point, I probably think that way. Venro looks like it's a knockoff of Benro, so is my guess, and so that usually worries me when things are just looking like they're knocking off from something that's already a relatively inexpensive system. So I think that I would think that it is. I would call that just from the name as suspect as far as quality goes. The things you're looking for oftentimes is how much weight it can handle. So you want to look at your camera rig and look at how much weight it may handle there, whether it's metal or some kind of composite. The composites will tend to be a little bit lighter. Also, the thing that really makes a difference with the fluid head is the fluidity of the head. Not so much that it's light, but that you can add some resistance to it so that you can kind of push up against it, and then it doesn't have a lot of play at the very beginning. So when you start moving, you want to see that it doesn't have. A lot of times they'll give really easily and then drop into the friction, and that becomes more problematic.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I'm assuming that with the setup you have, you're going to have somebody operate that tripod, right? So the fluid head is a huge part of that. I believe Small Rig just put out a tripod for about $150 US. I do have one in my garage that I've been meaning to play with. So I have it, I just haven't gotten to it. My go-to right now for an affordable tripod is a Prompter People HD 300. It goes for $449, and I did a YouTube review about a year and a half ago on it. And I've bought 7 of them. They're really great. And the Big Brother, I also have like 4 of those as well. So, but yeah, it's a really, really solid tripod. It's a 100 mil ball head, and the arms extend as well.
Mitchell?
Yeah, I agree. The Small Rig, I don't think it's Small HD. I think it's Small Rig.
You're right. I misspoke. It's Small
No problem.
Rig.
Just want to make sure everybody gets the right info.
Yeah, absolutely.
That really just seems too good to be true. I wish somebody would buy it and show it to us, because it comes with a fluid head, and a tripod that will handle, 25 pounds? And it's under $200? That's just amazing.
And Bill?
Everybody said a lot of the things. For me, setting up the tripod head is almost as important or more important than actually the controls. Big tripods, Socklers, O'Connors, and things like that have very precise controls for counterbalancing a camera. As you go down in size and down in scope, it tends to get a little rougher. But the idea is that once you set up a tripod for the camera that's on it correctly, you should be able to move that tripod or that camera into any position, including tilt down, tilt up, or whatever. Take your hands away, and it needs to stay there right where you left it. Then when you go to make a move in any axis, whether that is a tilt up and down or a pan left and right, it should be damped to the point where it's smooth and it stops and starts without jerkiness or anything else. If you've achieved that, no matter what range of tripod you're in good shape. If you haven't, your camera operators will have trouble keeping their shots smooth and looking good.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, everyone said pretty much everything, except this is about 1/3 to 1/10 of the cost of a decent fluid head. So I'd be very careful. And a lot of times what they call a fluid head is actually a friction head that they put grease between the friction plates on. And so they call it fluid head. A real fluid head actually pushes a fluid through a sizable valve that you can adjust the size of the valve on. And that's how it dampens the pan and tilt friction. And then they have separate brakes for stopping, for locking the head off. But you got to be careful that, like Alex said, that you don't have any irregularity in the fluidity of the head. In other words, it takes more force to start it moving, then that'll cause you to start every move with a little jerk. If you have to break that friction free from the lock or from the stable position to moving position.
And Sky.
I note that you're saying this is for your house of worship, and we have 3 different cameras, and they're lightweight Panasonics. So again, you're talking about your weight to ratio of how much you're going to be moving it, and consequently, if this is, I think this would be a great one to start with, or the small rig that was mentioned earlier, because you don't always move all 3 of your cameras if you've got more than one. Maybe you just have the one that does the tracking. So give this one a shot, but also, as has been talked about, make sure you buy extra plates. For some reason, if you're going to be taking this in and out, those little plates always disappear. That's why I like the Manfrottos, because pretty standardized.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Again, he says, this deal popped up in my social feed, and he's got a link at the bottom of this. Is this a good spec TV for regular home use, or is it too good to be true? No problem with the supplier. They're great. Just curious as to the specs of the TV.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I looked at that TV. It's an LG, and it at the 55-inch range is the sweet spot for price versus value, because they make more 55-inch panels than anything else. So it's a big commodity. So you'll find the $300 to $400 or euro priced TVs in that size range, and it looks pretty good. It does HDR, so. And LG is a pretty known brand, very good known brand. So I think it's a good deal, and I think it's legit.
Mitchell?
Yeah, there's only so many companies that make the actual panels themselves, and I think LG is one of 4 that do that. And I agree with Courtney. I think that specs look pretty good on that. But I have to say, I get a bit miffed when I brag about my new $4,000 Sony OLED TV, and somebody says, "Oh, I was just at Costco and I paid $200 for it."
That always gets you. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael has this one, and there's a lot of subtext here, but with the K&M 18811 stacker, second tier Omega stand be useful for stacking another keyboard on my desk without blocking my monitors. And he's also got a link to his desk there.
Courtney?
I have something very similar to this on my that holds my Poly D above my Kurzweil. So it goes onto a table, and it holds. If you have another set that goes below it, you got to have something here. Let me just cut to it so you know what I'm talking about. You see these legs underneath the that go underneath another synth. It needs to go under something to anchor it. And what a problem that I had is that they can wobble since there's two separate legs there and you separate them. But I solved that problem by taking a piece of angle aluminum, cutting it to the right length after I spaced them out, and tying the two together so that they wouldn't rock back and forth if you hit the synth from the side. So that's the main problem. But it seems to be sturdy enough, and it holds that Poly D, which is pretty heavy analog synthesizer because it's got a wooden case on it.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City is up next. He says, using a Netgear Nighthawk M1 router for an outdoor gig, and yesterday it overheated. The forums recommend running it with an internal battery removed or building an external cooling manifold. Any comments are welcome.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, it often worries me to take the batteries out of things because it, obviously that's the backup to make sure that it remains stable. That said, we have done this in hot environments, is take batteries out. And the reason for that, of course, is that the battery itself generates heat when it's being charged. Anytime you pick up anything that has been charged for a little while, especially at high rates of charging, you'll notice that the battery is pretty warm. So in a very hot environment, that's going to add, X number of degrees to the system. And in this case, it overloaded the system. I mean, it very well could have. That we've had that problem in the past where we pulled batteries out in very hot environments. Usually we don't think about those things under 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but I don't know what it was like in your area there. But usually that's when we start really thinking about 95 to 100 degrees is usually where we start paying attention to like battery power. The best thing to do is a lot of ventilation. And so we've done everything from, a lot of fans. So fans every 2U kind of thing in a rack to even air conditioning, where we just we actually inject air conditioning into the rack to try to keep things cooler. We've done that in Vegas at NAB of all things outside. We had a portable air conditioner pumping into it. It was the only way to keep the machinery running. So both of those things are pretty valid points.
And Courtney?
And make sure you orient the thing correctly, because a lot of times heat flow is designed for specific orientation. And I think with a router with built-in antennas, that's a pancake type router. So I think it's designed to sit flat like a piece of toast on a table. So if you're going to use it outside, you might raise it up, get it off of a surface, but keep it in the same orientation so that heat can flow into it and out through the vent holes in the top. Because if you change the orientation, it can change the heat flow, and that can cause overheating as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next again. He says, has anyone used Steinberg's VST Connect? And he has a link there. I'm curious how it manages latency when bringing distant contributors into a session.
Mitchell?
I can't tell you how it does it. Algorithms are magic to me, but Steinberg's VST plugins are some of the fastest devices out there. And I've used a lot of different ones, almost as many plugins as I have in my After Effects device. But I was just looking at the Yamaha RU16D10, I think it is, that Mickey was recommending. And the latency is like 4 or 5 milliseconds. So that's well below your threshold. So I'm just saying, in general, Steinberg does a great job.
Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York is up with this one. How have you changed your hourly rate as inflation and gas prices have increased?
Great question. Jason?
The answer is I haven't. I simply haven't needed to. The way that it works, at least at Nerds Limited, is that my new clients end up getting a new rate. My old clients pay what they paid before, and then at the end of every year I use a regression analysis to do demand forecasting for the next year, and then there's an adjustment.
Alex?
Yeah, I haven't really, we haven't made any major adjustments to it. I mean, I think that we kind of like Jason said, we look at the cost of everything as we go to each event, but the price of gas in general inflation hasn't really affected the cost of doing business, at least for us. I mean, it's a little bit more expensive for me to go to the office, but it's not very far away. So I think that I don't think that we've seen any kind of real impact that would make sense to pass on to our clients.
Nigel?
So I think there's a bad news, good news story here. The bad news is I think inflation is going up. I think there's now a high percentage chance we'll be in a recession within a year, if not way before that. And so there are many companies now starting to plan their brains around, well, if that happens, what am I going to do? And I would think that it's another bash on the head of traveling to events and doing large in-person events, which actually might push people towards doing more virtual events. So that might be the next double down that has an effect. So you may find actually services are more needed to do virtual than less. So that might actually give you a chance to raise your prices.
Mitchell?
Yeah, that's a sticky wicket, as we like to say. If the client gets any wind of something tied to a commodity like gasoline, they're gonna dump you. I much rather keep the work than get the extra $1 or $2 for the gas. Or in inflation, that's a tough one. I think some of the I liked what Jason had to say about that. That was cool. It sounds important. I want to apply those metrics.
Yeah, and it shouldn't impact, like if you have new clients coming on rate wise, that you can make some adjustments there. Bill?
I try everything in my power to decouple time and income, because I hate the idea that if you're bad and slow, you make more money than if you're good and fast. That doesn't make any sense to me. So if I can decouple the amount of time spent from the amount charged the client, I'm in better shape.
Noah?
Yeah, I completely agree with Bill. It's totally a mindset thing, and you got to think of like what value you're providing the client, and what your time is valued at. And so, as my demand has increased, my price per project, my price per hour, I guess you can calculate that if you want to, has increased as well. And I don't charge hourly. The minimum is a day rate of some sort, but really now I'm getting into a project by project base. And again, I'm trying to price that off of value, not off of how much it costs me or what have you. Hashtag Christo.
I was waiting for you to say that too, Alex.
Yeah, and I do want to underline what was talked about a little bit earlier. I think that the physical events are just going to keep on getting hammered. It's kind of a perfect storm, that we came out of COVID, and now the prices, the inflation makes it just brutal. I mean, every time we look at flights now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how anybody is traveling to anything. And then we're going to go into a recession. And recessions always drive virtual events. They have for literally the last 2 decades. Is they drive more and more online, whether it's it's an online tool or whatever. And so the thing is that it's we're really in I just think that if you're in physical events, you need to be looking at all the other options that might be available to you, because it is this is not, I don't think that they're going to survive what's happening, in the sense that giant physical events are going to have a very hard time recovering as we go through this process.
I just want to take a moment to note the poll that is in Mukana, where folks have said actually some people are still assessing it, and a number of people have said yes as well. So it's kind of 50-50 there, whether people have raised their rates or not. Jason?
Well, and to Alex's point, yesterday, in fact, just yesterday, I took one look at airline prices. I have a cousin getting married in Baltimore. I've decided I'm going to drive to Baltimore from Albuquerque. I would prefer to do that instead of going on a plane I could have gone to Europe 2 years ago for the same amount of money.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes to us again from Douglas Carmichael. This time he says, what model of keyboard stand would you recommend? I've looked at the K&M Spider Pro and the Ultimate Support Apex, but I'm open to others that could support 2 to 3 keyboards and be used from a seated position.
Courtney?
I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong thing on this, so I don't have an answer for you. Sorry.
I'm looking into this, Douglas, so we might DM back and forth in Discord, because I'm looking for something as well to raise and just elevate this space here. So we'll be in touch. Next question.
Andre Dahle in Berlin is up next. What extensions, and he has that in quote, do people use to get a camera tripod higher than its max height? Sometimes I have to shoot over standing people's heads. We usually use small podiums, but there must be a more professional approach.
Alex?
Yeah, typically the most typical way to do it is to put what we call risers, and those risers can be, the most typical height is about a meter high, and they're about a meter by a meter, and then we have 2 of them, one for the operator and one for the camera, and those are separated by about an inch, and that means that the operator foot movement does not affect the camera shake, especially if they're somewhere in the back. That, on a long zoom lens, you're going to have some challenges that way. Now, those risers can be the issue with the risers themselves, and they can be higher or lower. I mean, we have risers right now in the office in the stage that are like, I think, 8 feet high, or 6 feet high, or 9 feet high, or something like that. So they can get very high. The main thing there is that you have to also look at the surface they're getting put on. If you're in a location with concrete, you're going to have a much better solution than if you're on one that, say, over a like the San Jose Convention Center sits over top of the parking garage, and so anytime big cars go under it, you can feel the vibration in the cameras. The way we handle that is typically to build a sand core. So you actually pour sand into it, and and then you add neoprene and a couple other layers on top, and you'll end up with a very smooth head. I know some people who use concrete blocks instead of building risers, and they literally lower them, into the location to reduce the vibration. And sometimes it's concrete with sand. So these are all things that can be done to get a nice smooth shot from a long distance. So those are things that you can do there. The other more portable way to do it is called a spider pod. And we've owned lots of those where they unfold very quickly and have a little stand for the operator to stand on, about the same height.
Noah?
Yeah, my go-to is the spider pod as well. But to Alex's point, separate the stand of the tripod from the operator, right? So those don't shake. I've also designed and built a wooden structure for my house of worship, and I couldn't find the picture, but if I do, I'll send it somewhere. So,
Courtney?
Yeah, everything that Alex said. That spider pod looks like something like this. It's foldable. It's like a spider, and it rises up, and you can adjust it in height. So it's handy to have. It folds up, and it keeps you from standing on the same platform as the camera that shakes the camera if you're doing that.
Sky?
Again, you're usually in the back and you're on a long lens, so keeping stability is the challenge. The other challenge is keeping people from sitting on your little stand, because these are the ones that sit and they sip their coffee and they want to just place it down, and so it's weird. You almost have to put a perimeter of other chairs in front of it. And I see other heads nodding that it's weird that it's something, it's a flat surface, I should put my cup here, I should sit on it, and please don't do that.
Right.
Maybe a cattle prod.
Alex?
Yeah, the stanchions, we use stanchions. Those are the things that have kind of a ribbon that goes around, and those stanchions are usually 18 inches in perimeter, around the perimeter. And we find if you do that, and then the second thing that you can do is some of the platforms that we've used, they literally put a angle on the first 8 inches. So it literally sits at an angle on the first 8 inches and then goes flat across. And when you add the stanchions at 18 inches, it makes it very hard to put anything on it without it sliding off. Because I asked them, I was like, these are the weirdest risers I've ever seen. I was at some event, and he said, well, no one puts their coffee on it. so it was an interesting approach.
And Noah?
Yeah, I ended up finding that picture so I can show you real quick. But these are basically 2x4 construction with a single piece of plywood that was cut very strategically. So a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet made 3 different risers. And so that's just for the operator. We put a chair on the top spot, and they could stand or sit there. And then for the tripod itself, I took some wood blocks and blocked up the tripod separate than the base.
And then Guy also mentions that you might want to look at a small portable jib that can go on a heavy duty tripod to get up over the crowd. And Chris Weidner also talks about PTZ cameras in the comments to help with this question. Next question.
Next one comes from Eduardo Augustine in Panama. He says, my ATEM Mini randomly stopped managing audio. I could see the audio bars moving, not muted, but no audio output. Had to power cycle the ATEM. Can the mic jack affect the ATEM Mini this way? And has anyone experienced this before?
Chris.
So Eduardo, this is interesting. A couple of weeks ago, somebody on, I think it was in After Hours, was talking about how their ATEM stopped passing audio. And a lot of times when I see stuff like that, I just kind of brush it off until, of course, it affects you. And so I did a recording session with my ATEM where audio was not passing through the HDMI input. So I don't use the 1/8 inch jacks at all. And like you discovered, I had to power cycle everything before it actually passed audio through. So the person that I had initially heard from said that, there's had to be repaired or replaced or, go in for service, whatever. So yes, definitely double check. If you need audio to come through, double check that it's there before you hit the record button.
Good call. Courtney?
Yeah, what I do is I plug a monitor into the HDMI out that has a headphone out on it, and I just check it through that headphone out to make sure that the audio is passing all the way through. And sometimes, depends on what you plug that HDMI output into. If it's a recorder or something, sometimes HDCP, can mess things up and switch off the video. And I've never heard of it switching off the audio, but it may be included as a problem. So you might have to unplug and replug the HDMI cable a couple of times if it's not properly, if the EDID is not properly telling the ATEM what type of monitor is being plugged in.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, the few times I've had issues with the minis, Power Cycle pretty much fixed it, besides like a firmware update on a serious issue. So yeah, that's definitely a good solution, and that's kind of one of those debatable things, like should they have included a power switch, right? So you can easily power it off and on, or just physically have to unplug it. But yeah, if you can avoid it, try to go on an audio interface and skip the 1/8 inch jack like we said before.
And Alex?
I do think that even though that we think of it as normal, I've come to believe that the ATEM minis were not designed to be on all the time. Like they just weren't tested that way. And you see this in a test unit system where someone tests something for a long, they test things under the circumstances that they expect, but I don't think that they leave them on for weeks, and see if they still operate. And as a result, I have gotten into the habit now of kind of my Sunday ritual is to restart everything, just like let everything refresh what it's doing. I've definitely had a lot less, the issue that I'm mostly dealing with is the issue where it comes up gray in Zoom. And so I find that when I have that ritual, it doesn't happen anymore. So this is how rituals begin. is something I did this thing, random thing. I don't know if it made any difference, but soon I will have a Stonehenge dedicated to it.
I like that idea. That happened to me coming in today. It was like grayed out. It's like, okay, so we've got to do this reset. So thank you for that, Alex.
Yeah.
Sky?
To your point, Alex, anything that's done 3 times is qualified as a tradition, because the first time you do it, it's the first time you do it. It's a new thing. The second time you do it, you think about it. It's like, well, it's the way we did it last time. And the third time you do it, oh yeah, we've always done it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Next question.
Eric Price out of Kansas City has this one. Affordable options for wireless camera transmission. Hollyland seems to be a common choice, but I also see a lot of negative comments on that product.
Alex?
I think I'll just state that wireless is hard. And so when you start saving money at wireless, you have to know that there are some negatives that are going to come with it. That can be latency, stability, those types of things are things that come with that. So it's not a trivial problem, to transmit video at a very high resolution from one point to another. So I think that you're not going to find, I think that, and Noah, I think has some of these, so he can underline those, but I think that you're not going to find something in the same price range that competes with Hollyland as far as stability and quality.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough thing. When I first started doing wireless stuff, it was almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago or so, and I bought the consumer grade HDMI streaming device, basically that works in a living room, right? And I did that under like 30 feet, and that worked really well for very limited things. And then as you evolve, you move up to different systems. Hollyland is pretty decent. I know they do get a bad rap, but I think it's the technology itself, because 2.4 or 5 gigahertz bands can get convoluted very quickly. But my minimum now is Teradek products, and they do have some good affordable HDMI options, so I would look into that. But the Teradek Bolt 4K is phenomenal.
And Bill?
I want to emphasize how complicated this is for a couple of reasons. And very briefly, just remember that once upon a time, only actual TV stations could broadcast TV a long way with a good quality signal. Now we have maybe 100 million out of our 300 million or whatever it is now in America who seem to want to do broadcast of their own little camera to some receiver thing. And between the FCC and bandwidth issues and a whole bunch of technical things, I think it's going to take a long time before this becomes trivial, and you do not have to toss a lot of money at it to get solid results, simply because so many people want to do it. And with the technology behind it, there's always going to be conflicts and too many people who want to do it in the same space.
And Courtney?
And the thing you want to watch out for on these cheaper systems is multipath cancellation. So what happens is it may work fine if your transmitter and receiver are sitting at a specific point and not moving, but as soon as you move a few inches one way or a few inches the other way, you lose the signal because the signal is coming to those antennas out of phase. So look for something that has multiple receiver antennas on it, usually a minimum of 2 and up to 4. So that it uses those multiple receivers or front ends on the receiver to cancel out or to vote and see which antenna has the best reception and switch to that antenna, and that cancels out the multipath cancellation that can cause you to lose your signal. So look for multiple antennas on the cheaper ones. 2 is the minimum and 4 is better.
Next question.
John Preto in Las Vegas. Gold mount or V mount batteries? Engage.
Mitchell.
John, you probably heard me mention this before. The V mount is being more and more popular, but it is not as a secure connection as a gold mount. If you've ever had a V mount pop off the back of a camera back, you know what I'm talking about.
Bill?
Neither of the above, only because I spent most of my life in V-mount. I've used Anton Bauer's a lot. I used to go rent for big shoots, 7 or 8 Anton Bauer's as part of the running the camera package. I've just decided that they're too big, they're too complicated, the whole system is too expensive. So I have moved to all Sony F-series or M-series batteries. I have a case that's actually right behind me now because I got a field shoot coming up. I think it's on this side that looks pretty big. It is full of, I think, 13 of the large Sony 990s. And I can run everything on my whole system off of that. And for something like the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, which is notoriously power hungry, I can run it for multiple hours off one and switch to another. And it's just lighter, easier, less expensive. I think power is developing. I'd still, if I had mission critical stuff, I would still trust V-mount and Anton Bauer. If you have to do something where there's serious money on the line, I probably wouldn't do this. But for everything on my level, this has been much easier, much faster, and just as reliable. Alex?
So I hear that V-mount is less stable than gold mount. So if I'm, oftentimes I'll choose gold mount. What I have at home is V-mount. For some of the stuff that I use there, and I've never had an issue with it. So I theoretically have this thing in the back. Theoretically have this thing in the back of my head that says that V-mount shouldn't. I'm always worried that it's going to pop off. Maybe the reason it's never popped off is because I'm so worried about the V-mounts popping off that I push it down and I go like this, and then I make sure that it's really on there, and then I walk away. So, but I agree that theoretically that the gold mount is more stable. I've just never had anything happen to the V-mount.
And Eric says that I'm only looking for a short shot location. So is there an easy way to run cables to get to the second camera? So just adding that there. Sky?
Yes, I went with V-mount because that's what was available to me. It was also, you kind of marry into a family similar to if you're going with a Nikon. You kind of have to stick with that family, or Panasonic. So V-mount historically, plus the attachments on the plate now also allow you to be the kind of the main hub for your phone and your iPad and some of the other things. And I've run like 6 hours my Blackmagic 4K with I think it's a 800. Okay, somebody talk about the different voltage and what you can take on an airplane when you buy batteries.
Bill?
Well, actually, that is the thing. That for a long time, they were being really tough about how the batteries that you carried on. I think they're a little bit away from that, but that's another reason I like those Sony F-series 950s or 990s. And you can get an adapter plate for V-mount that 2 of these will fit into, slap on the back of a V-mount system, and it works just fine.
Next question.
Keenan Campbell, Princeton, Illinois. When did pop-up polls start in Mukana? Great feature that should be used often.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I think they came around January. I remember Alex doing that. As for the polls, I've pretty much been the only one that's ever put polls in there, and I'm going to put one in right now to see gauge on this. But it's really about what the questions are, and if a question needs a poll. And so I've been trying to think of ways to introduce polls more. And I know Liberty's got a poll at the top of the hour she's going to do. So just kind of getting more engagement on that and working on playing with that part of Mukana.
Alex?
2017. Like that's how long polls have been in Mukana. We just haven't been using them because there's not somebody doing it. Like I just can't. They're there. I can't manage like hosting and doing polls at the same time, and so they just sit there. But I'm happy to use them more often. I don't want to go crazy with them because I always I'm conscious to how many people are like ignoring them. When they hit ignore, I kind of take it like, oh, they didn't like that, and so I think that 3 or 4 of them a morning would be kind of fun, or 2 or 3 in the morning would be a lot of fun. And we just need a team to kind of get ahead of it and figure out what they should ask against a given question. I think it'd be fun.
Agreed. Bill?
Jeffrey, I just want to make sure you're doing a poll question on poll questions, right?
Yeah, I thought that would be fun.
just wanted to check, make sure I wasn't hearing it wrong.
John?
Alex did tell us long ago that they were there, and I remember very early on him telling us that. And yes, I do enjoy them, yeah.
And the results of the poll about how many polls would you like to see during each show? 1 to 2 votes, only when necessary, got the top response of only when necessary. And I just thought, to the point about the engagement with us doing YouTube marketing in the second hour and wanting to see, well, it's a great way as we play around with the Monday business ideas. This is going to be something that's really helpful for me as I produce the show to just see where people are, because we do have a mix of very technical folks and then folks on the business side and the education side. So I think that as a producer, to make sure that the content that we produce is valuable to the audience, polls is extremely, extremely helpful. Alex?
Yeah, the thing that I'm always worried about with polls is specifically that they get to be a crutch. So we see a lot of events where people go, well, the way to add interactivity is polling. And so it becomes kind of this crutch that people use for live stream interactivity because the comments don't really work and the Q&A is impossible to manage. So polls are easy for them to quantify. So I'm definitely interested in polls, but I'm always concerned about overdoing it. So I think that when we ask for polls, if we put them into Mukana, that we should really think that that's something it's not to get interactivity, but it is to get, like, we're really curious about what the audience is, what they think, as opposed to just putting them up because it's a poll.
Right. Good point. Sky?
I just observed it myself. I answered the poll at the beginning of this conversation, and then I was swayed by the conversation. I'm thinking, no, those are a good idea, and we do need to get used to the tool. So maybe we should do them a couple more times, and so that's where I got swayed in the conversation.
Bill?
I'm a little on Alex's side on this, though, about being wary about them, because a poll generally says, what do you already know about? And famously, companies like Apple said, well, we could poll on this, but if we poll on this, we will never innovate, because all you do is determine what the audience already understands, and you never move them beyond that to something they might like better.
And Jeffrey?
And hopefully I don't get in trouble with this, Alex, but not only can we do a poll, we can also do a question where there's a correct answer and you can answer the question.
Yeah, I don't want to use that right now, but that's for schools. Schools use that. Yeah,
we add testing.
Yeah, exactly.
Testing. Next question.
Next one comes from Eric Nathan in Bellingham, Washington. And Eric says, is anyone familiar with the new Zoom F8N Pro? Curtis Judd just did a review showing a comparable noise floor with the MixPre 3.
Jason?
Not sure how intimately familiar someone can be with a product that was announced on March 1st. That said, the price is comparable. And as far as audio is concerned, it needs to be extensively better than, as far as I'm concerned, the reigning king before it gets considered, at least in my rigs. Price is about the same. It's new and it's untested. So I don't know, maybe.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think the whole F series, the preamps and all the F series of Zooms are actually pretty good. They're comparable. And if you're using them, I'd say if you're not using a dynamic mic into it, you'll never be able to hear the difference between the two, or you'll be hard pressed to hear the difference between the two. I've tested my F6 with the Sennheiser MKH60 and MKH70, which are very low noise microphones, RF condensers. And they sound fine. They sound clean. very little self noise. Like I say, if unless you're using a lossy dynamic mic like a high LPR 40 or something into it. But these mixers, these particular recorders, mixer and recorder, it's really a recorder, is designed for field recording use, and it's designed for video production and film production. So it's not likely you're going to be using a dynamic mic into it in those particular functions. You're going to be using a wireless mic or a boom microphone, which condenser boom, which has a much higher output. So you're really not going to get into the noise floor of the particular preamps. So it's probably not concerning. I'd look more for the durability of the units. I think the Sound Devices units are a little more durable than the Zoom units are. Although the Zoom units, I'm pretty impressed with their cases.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd have to test that myself to believe it. I think that's my especially you have Courtney, and so you think that they're the same.
I have, and Curtis Judd has. He's actually shown. If you watch, I've watched his video too, and he does a good job of comparing the two and actually measuring the difference in self noise. And they're pretty close.
The other thing is that there's an enormous. I guess for me, there's an enormous amount packed into the mixed pre's, and so the preamps are very important, and I think they are comparable. They could be comparable if Courtney says so. But I've had Zoom recorders, and I find the interface and process to be mind-numbing. So that's why I don't use Zooms. It's actually not because of their sound; it's because of the interface. But that's a whole other problem. So I think that there's a bunch of things that they have to get over. But I mean, I will say that Zoom. I mean, I bought the Zoom stuff when they first came out. So I was jumping on it, and I think that it was just maybe I got in too early. So I had lots of their little mixers and other things like that, and there was just so many pain points, and I think maybe they've grown through that, and I probably should. If Courtney's using it and Curtis Judd's using it, I might see if we can play with those again. But I think that they didn't start off well, so I think that's part of their problem.
What are you using instead if it's the interface that you're not necessarily a fan of?
I just have a lot of Sound Devices equipment.
Okay.
I've been using Sound Devices equipment. I actually got Zoom equipment before Sound Devices equipment, of all things. But once I graduated, I haven't really gone back from 722, 744s and 788s and all the way up.
All right. Bill?
Richard Devine at Apple, who's one of the big sound gurus over there, did a comparison, I think, on LinkedIn that I saw this morning when I got up, and he was very impressed. 8 channels with 32-bit float across all ranges, a couple of modules that you can pull out and put in like mid-side and other decoding things. It really looks great. All that for $1,000. That's a pretty substantial play in the market. And if nothing else, it's going to keep Sound Devices doing what they do brilliantly, which is innovating and continuing to provide value. So this is a good race to have.
And Noah?
Yeah, the preamps going from 3 of the mixed pre 3 to 8. Not that they're always directly comparable, but obviously there's the OS of the system, right? And like Alex and the others have said, like Zoom may not be as streamlined as the mixed pre series and Sound Devices, but the standout feature for the Sound Devices is the noise assist. And so if and when other manufacturers start putting that on their products, I will be super excited.
And Courtney?
Yeah, and the Zoom does have auto mix built in. You don't have to pay extra for it. But a thing to remember, a lot of people, get so concerned about the, noise of the mic preamps, and then they go and use it only with RF microphones plugged into it, where, of course, the only preamp is in that transmitter that you're putting on the talent. So, and it's coming in line level into the mixer itself. So the mic preamps really aren't that important unless you're using a not too sensitive microphone plugged into it. So that's a consideration as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, do you think widespread adoption of electric vehicles and renewable energy, solar for example, would change the production pricing equation?
Alex?
I don't think so. I don't think that would have a major, I'd be really surprised if those change anything anytime soon. I mean, the cost of power for most of our productions is a small fraction of the total cost of production.
Courtney?
Yeah, and the only thing really I think it would change is you have to allow more time for your commute if you're beyond your battery range, because you have to stop and recharge it. You're not going to be able to recharge it like you can fill up at a gas station. So it's going to take you a half hour or so. So you're going to have to, it's going to cost you a half hour more of your time if you have to recharge your car on your way or before you go to location. So you have to take that into consideration. The cost wise, probably is going to be not that much difference. Well, it is much cheaper to charge an electric car. I'll give you that.
Noah?
The short answer is yes, it will affect, but to everybody's point, gas and energy is only part of the equation currently, but it does have a trickle-down effect, and everything is driven, at least in part, by transportation, right? And so right now it's about 76 cents per mile that it costs to operate a regular gas vehicle, and this will go down over time. That's including insurance and gas and all those things. But it's just one of the many factors that's going to change our future. And I think a bigger factor is going to be self-driving cars and how that will affect the economy. And so when that 76 cents per mile goes to 10 cents, like what does that look like for the cost of goods being delivered, for how we spend our time, right, when driving? But ultimately, this is just a big adoption curve, and we're just in the beginning stages of it.
Jeffrey?
I'm going to speak not on the transportation side, but actually on the renewable energy side, because myself and a couple other people in After Hours have been working with a company and reviewing some of their products. I got a couple in the other room that are basically the size of a cooler, but can do up to 7-hour charge on things. I'm actually going to be doing a live stream where all my gear is going to be plugged into one unit. Then I'm expecting the live stream to go at least 4 hours before I'd have to recharge with solar panels. And so it's not as much about price, but more on the effect of location, because now you don't have to worry about where to find your next power source. You could actually just bring it with you.
Sky?
As an owner of a 2013 Nissan Leaf, totally electric, we did have to retrain our brain how to use energy and where that energy. You didn't just pull into an AM PM and get a bad hamburger and gas in a minute. So consequently, you have to rethink a lot of things. And I love Noah's point of no such thing as a free horse. There's offset challenge of energy. I recognize that somewhere somebody else is having to create my electricity. Now, is that fossil fuel? Fortunately, here in the Northwest, we have a lot of hydropower, so that's a passive. But then you've got challenges to fish. So again, there's going to be challenges as we move forward. But I think the most exciting would be a self-driving truck with Fenwick from his house to Las Vegas. I think that would have been I kind of like driving his truck. It was a good fun.
And Noah?
Yeah, energy usage is just going to continue to go up. I think that's going to happen over time. And so there's going to be alternate ways of producing that energy, whether it's solar or wind or geothermal. So definitely look out for a lot of those things. But there's going to be tons of things that are different about the future, and I'm excited for it.
Next question.
Roy Myers is up next from Bel Air, Maryland, and he has not a question but an info regarding the pre-show chatter. He says, take old smoke detectors that contain americium or 241 to the fire department, or contact First Alert for mailers. Alkaline batteries go in the trash. For rechargeables, Home Depot often has a bin. So just a note there for that.
Jason?
So, yeah, I brought this up in ionization. In ionizing smoke detectors, there is a tiny bit of americium. I checked it. Yes, it actually had to do with the Manhattan Project. And we're talking 0.29 micrograms. That is 1/1000th of a grain of salt. And the reason that they do that is because it's really, really reliable. So like when smoke enters the smoke alarm, the nitrogen and oxygen ions created by the americium attach themselves to the smoke particles and the current stops. So it's actually a restriction, not a continuance, and that's why it's inexpensive and extremely reliable to use.
John?
Jason, your degree's in psychology. What are you talking about?
Physics, and I'm good at it.
Roy for the win. Thank you very much. The more you know.
Mitchell?
That's awesome. Also be aware that exit signs, old ones that glow when the power goes out, also have a material in them that I guess is a radium byproduct. And it's always better to drop them off at the fire department or go on the EPA site and find the site. Because we had that problem here at our condominium. They said, oh, we can replace all of your exit signs for $10,000. And I said, for $1,000, I'll just drive them over to the fire department.
Sky?
As a community, we're better for knowing each other. Roy, you win. This is great. Thank you. Because I have a Home Depot right next door to me, and that bag of alkaline of those the AA's and AAA batteries. I don't have any 9 volts that Bill likes to touch with his tongue, but I can take those over there. And I'm still more concerned about what is a Jason Batium. I think that just sounds dangerous.
And Noah?
I really wish I knew what the percentage of household batteries are currently being recycled. It's probably a very low percentage, unfortunately, but John Preto says 0%. What's interesting to me is batteries in electric cars are like 96% recyclable, right? And so there's a high value in those minerals and those elements that go into that. And so we're just going to have to get better at that over time.
Yeah, and just adding to that list, I believe Best Buy also does recycling, battery recyclables as well. Next question.
And there's a Batteries Plus national chain that recycles them all too. Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina says it's been 4 months since Office Hours' first exploration into NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Has anyone spent more time learning about NFTs, and is there an appetite to continue the conversation within the Office Hours community?
Alex?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of interest in NFTs. I think we're just scraping the surface. I think Bo's going to talk about it a little bit. He's going to jump into after hours after this morning, and talk about what he's been playing with and researching. So we should stay tuned for that. So that's coming right after this show. And he's just going to explore some of the stuff that he's been working on.
Awesome. Noah?
I also want to say I have a huge interest in it. I haven't fully explored it yet. It's been one of those things that's been on top of mind that I haven't fully sunk my teeth into yet, but I find it fascinating and interesting for sure.
Yeah, we've been actually applied to an accelerator, didn't get in for building out something for Chosen Media Kids NFT wise. So Bo, definitely going to jump into after hours to see what you have discovered, because it's like this pendulum that is swinging. There's a lot of buzz around the holidays, top of the year. And I think just with some of the things that have happened with cryptocurrency, and it's slowing down, but with anything relatively new, that's to be expected. So we'll see what you have to share in after hours. Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York says, why do you keep your ATEM Mini on all the time except to refresh it? Is it more damaging to power it up and down every day versus the heat it generates all the time?
Alex?
Oftentimes I feel like even if I save startup state, it doesn't, some things just don't get saved. And so the reason I tend not to turn it off, I'm like, I got to reset a bunch of things. It's usually the camera settings. So the camera settings, it's a weird connection to the camera until you start moving it. It then starts resetting everything again. And so the interaction between the camera and my ATEM is why I usually leave it on.
Mitchell?
My room gets a little too cold sometimes, so the ATEM helps to keep it warm.
Do you turn the LED lights all the way up? Is that part of the deal?
They're up, and I got that smoke comes out of it, and
exactly.
You see those little heat waves.
If you put a little top over top of it, you can set your coffee and keep it warm.
And Courtney?
I turned mine off. I put a separate switch on it so that it have lights underneath it. I have it stacked up on top of my mixer, and so the lights shine down on the mixer, and they're powered off the same 12-volt power supply. And I just put a toggle switch at the back that turns both of them on and off, and that way I can easily tell that my privacy is preserved because the ATEM has killed all camera inputs to the internet. And the other thing, as Alex mentioned, is you go into the setup and turn the backlight on the buttons down to like 20%, and you won't have any heat problems. And I reboot mine every day. That way it does solve those problems of it getting locked into gray mode, which happens periodically. It'll solve that problem. And as well is try and keep the number of graphics or videos you have in the media pool down to a minimum, because that'll take longer to start it up each time. Because if you save your setup, your startup state, it has to load those graphics back in off of disk or over the USB connection every time you turn it on.
Thank you so much for that, Courtney. It's like, wait a second, that should be a lab. Bill?
I do the same thing Courtney does. I have it on a switch panel that has 7 devices on it, and I turn the master off every night because I don't think there's any reason to be drawing all these small vampire power currents for all the things that I don't need 90% of the time.
And Alex.
I have a theory that's I'm not quite ready to, but I have a theory that every 32 times I connect to a virtual event, I lose it goes gray. So I think I've been having trouble counting it. Like, you try to tick it off, but I think that there's a bit flipped somewhere in there. So it seems to be connected to 32 times that I jump onto a meeting, it goes gray. And so it's some kind of negotiation though with the process I'm still trying to figure out.
Okay, 32. Next question.
This is why binary math is important, kids. Jens Olson in Sandpoint, Idaho says, what's the best format/settings to RIP Blu-rays into to protect them against a 4-year-old? There's no force in nature.
Here you go. At the end of the day, it depends. As far as format is concerned, I don't know. I mean, you could easily just do a DMG. Depends on if it's a Mac or Windows. You can also does anyone remember DVD 9 to 5 that would take, the 9s and the dual layer to the single layer, and it would convert it pretty quickly. I'm trying to remember the name of the Handbrake. Handbrake is, I think, the easiest way to do it, and the higher the bit rate level, I think there's a theoretical maximum, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. It's only 1080 unless you've got the ridiculous Blu-ray to begin with.
Alex.
Yeah, I think the one that I've used in the past is called Aurora Blu-ray copy on the Mac. I think that it has some more features than. Maybe that's not the one. I haven't done it for a long time, so it could be kind of old. So and Handbrake is also one there. I haven't had Blu-rays for a long time. I do think that it's unfortunate that we really have been dumbed down, way below Blu-ray quality for a long time because of streaming. And the number one problem with it is that streaming wants you to be fast reactive. So it wants to hand you that first segment and play it quickly so that people don't feel like there's something wrong. And it creates a behavior of someone tapping on it over and over again. As a consumer of what I would consider high-end consumer that would like to watch things at high quality, I would love to schedule things. Like, I would love to say, I want to watch this at 7:00, or I want to watch it, and then know that I'm getting 50 megs a second or something like that, where it just slowly caches it up into my device and then plays it out at a much higher quality than even Blu-ray, which would be capable of it. The cost is high speed delivery, not low speed delivery, for the bandwidth. And so I think that it would be great to, have a higher quality setting that someone like me would pay. I would pay twice as much for a subscription service if I knew that I was getting 50 meg streams.
Mitchell?
Also, I don't know if it's can survive a 4-year-old, but the quality of the RIP, if you use like a Plextor drive, they're probably still around somewhere. They always did the best job of giving me the best and most compatible DVD disc.
And Nigel?
Yes, to answer to Alex's point, if you have $6,000 to spare, we'd be happy to sell you a kaleidoscope if you want the bigger one, $14,000, and that would solve that problem for you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Nigel.
Okay, I'm saving up.
Next question.
Next one comes from Eric Nathan in Bellingham, Washington. I need a recommendation for a small footprint, heavy-duty compact stand for a pop-out green screen.
Nigel?
Yeah, small, cheap, light. Is it 2 of the 3 you're allowed? Yes, the one that I have used is called the Westcott X-Drop Wrinkle Resistant. And I don't know whether I would call it heavy duty because anything that's pop-up is not likely to be heavy duty, but it at a pinch it works.
Noah?
Yeah, so I can show you the couple things that I use here. So the first one is the Manfrotto 1004 back master stand. The best thing about this stand is its stackability. So you can actually connect them together. So you can have 3, 4, 5 of these daisy chained. And so the footprint of these is a lot smaller because of its ergonomic design. You could also raise up to about 12 feet. So it's a super powerful stand. I would take 2 of these with these like little linchpin clips. And depending on how big your green screen is, you might need to upgrade to these larger clips, these duck clamps. And so, yeah, that would basically clip to the top of the green screen and let it hang, as you can see. And then finally, make sure you have some sort of steamer to help with the wrinkles.
Good call. Bill?
As soon as you said heavy duty, I went away from most of the foldable, what I call lightweight light stands. My rigs now go on to these. I own, I think, 5 of these, and they're a serious chromed stand, that center tube. They're heavy, but the legs also unclip and fold up against the base, so it's really easy to throw these in a car or truck or something like that. This will not only serve for your background stand, but it's strong enough and heavy duty enough for you to put a boom arm on top of it and do something like rig a hair light. So the light stands, as opposed to the grip type stands, I put a firm line between those, and I don't try to get the ones that do the lightweight light fold up stuff. I don't have it hold grip stuff in the field, particularly when there are people underneath it.
Next question.
Tyler Roberts says, I have a Canon R6 I want to use as a webcam. What's a good option that gives me some flexibility for adjustments?
Alex?
I'm trying to figure out what adjustments you're trying to make. So with what are the options? I'm going to take on mounting options because I'm not sure what you're trying to adjust there. So it should show up as a webcam. I think that the R6 has a webcam capability. The mounting, I'm using a Triad Orbit because it's got a low open, and then it goes right behind my my desk, and so it's just really easy to work with.
Jason?
And I'll pick up where Alex left off. Assuming what you're talking about is some sort of PTZ physical adjustment, if you get a Ronin and put it on a little Tilta head, this will basically take a battery, just a simple battery connection in, and from there you can plug a PlayStation. I'm not kidding, a PlayStation controller into it and use little joysticks and move it around, and it works wonderfully.
And Noah?
Yeah, I would look at the USB interface. I think a lot of the Canons are limited to like 540p, so they're not the greatest quality. So I would highly recommend getting some sort of capture device, right? So like ATEM Mini or something similar to that. If we're talking about adjustability, I could talk about lenses. So most of us are at like a 35 mil or so, between 24 and say 50 or so. So you might look at having that, and I'm about 4 feet maybe away from my lens, so that kind of gives you some notes there. But yeah, separating the tripod or the mount of the camera separate than your desk is super crucial, because if you move your desk at all, it's going to shake the camera, and that's not going to look good. So either a tripod separately, or in my case, I have a little filing cabinet, and I built up a wooden structure to support my camera and teleprompter.
Awesome. And we are at the end of the first hour. So thank you again to our producers for all of your questions. Get your YouTube marketing questions together. The idea behind today's, our second hour, is essentially a lot of people fall into typically one or two categories when people think about like YouTube and YouTube marketing. You have the content creators, and then you have those that actually like they run a business or they're trying to get in front of an audience. And knowing that YouTube is the second most, and I'm going to pull up some graphics here of just the overall, like YouTube is a massive ecosystem, and there's so much more. So many of us are really scratching the surface, and hopefully during this segment, we'll be able to just ask those deeper questions and talk about, like, there's a difference between like viewing time, there are analytics to dive into, there's the advertising dashboard, and those are some tools that, depending on, like, for us, when we are working with clients, that is somewhat of a value add when we're able to give them some deeper insights into some of the content that they're creating. Just quickly, some snapshot numbers of just like how much content gets uploaded to YouTube and how people are searching. And knowing that YouTube is the second, it's owned by Google, so it's a search engine. So SEO, search engine optimization, actually being a really good tool. And when you think about how your customers find you and just some of those discoverability options outside of just using social media, but if you think about your customer's intent, and let me just skip down here. Yeah, how are your customers finding you, that you can begin to create content that they're using platforms like YouTube to find. Yesterday, I'm still having issues with my telestration, and I went to YouTube. To do a quick search, and David Paskin's video came up about 2 ways of if you want to use Keynote. And I literally just typed in like how to telestrate. I think it was how to telestrate ATEM, like just keywords, not even a full sentence. And David Paskin's video came up, someone else's video came up, and there was a screenshot. I need to send that to Alex. There was a screenshot of the Alex Lindsay method. So just some of those keywords that will help when your audience is looking for your content. So outside of many of us who are using YouTube to live stream for clients, but okay, once the live stream happens, and it might not be in your hands, this is something maybe your client is still doing, but it's also helpful to just understand and be able to provide them some additional tips of, okay, making sure that you've got a great thumbnail and using keywords in the title. Your title means everything. Do they go back? I've seen a lot of lives that once the live stream happens, there's no optimization in the description area that has the relative keywords that will help people who, you've got a certain number of people who are watching your event live, but what about the people who are watching the replay? And you're not just, when you're marketing on YouTube, it's not just for that platform. You're hoping to convert users, whether that be they've watched and now you've mentioned a product that you have so that they click on that link. And then now, because the idea is to generate revenue, to generate sales for some people, again, going back to this idea of where are they in the sales funnel, in the journey map. So just if you take a quick look at this of what are some of the kinds of content that you can create that is the awareness? If you are new, you've got a new business, a new startup, how can you get in front of people? Because right now you just want people to get to know you. Or are you further along where people have an idea, they're trying to make some kind of decision. So right now they're doing a lot of their research, they're doing a lot of discovery. So those are, like those live product demos, webinars, or are you looking at people that are further along the sales funnel where it is, okay, they're debating between you and another vendor. What kind of content might you have on your channel that will help them say, you know what, Noah is our guy, and this is, who we want to go with. So just thinking a little bit deeper about the kind of content that you are creating on YouTube, and more than just uploading content, but using it to leverage like a sales cycle, get your customers in from, and I'm saying a lot of business related stuff. It could be that, you're just looking to, just scrubbing through it could be that you're not using YouTube for that, like sales conversion. Maybe you are just really trying to build community. And so you're just educating and you're just looking to inform. Well, even some of those people ultimately convert because it could be that you want to bring them into, Patreon, or there's something else that you have that is, that you're trying to bring them into that community. So just a quick snapshot there of just some of the ways that you can think of and look at YouTube, again, beyond just uploading content. So let's get into it. Sky.
Uploading content. I have a picture of my breakfast I want to share, because that's, again, the physical thousands of hours of, as I know Chris Fenwick hates the word content because it becomes so homogenized and a ubiquity of it doesn't mean anything anymore. But YouTube, as in owned by Google, when Google was first introduced to me, somebody says, "Oh, I don't like Google. You are their product." And I was like, what do you mean by that? He says, well, they take your data of what you are interested in and they sell you stuff. Okay, so they make their revenue as a marketing platform. I'm okay with that, because I used to have to pay for Vimeo or these other locations to store my videos, and YouTube is offering me this service. But again, it's not free, because I have to sit through now even more of their ads, and they're harvesting my data and selling it to people that want to target me. Now, I go back to 2008 when I watched a high school kid making political ads in a facility in Washington, D.C. during the elections. And I'm thinking, that guy's getting paid like $6 an hour. And this was the early days of the internet, and people were not focusing on where do they get their content from. And I'm realizing now, we were at that time doing broadcast, but now what this is doing is narrowcasting, very specifically finding who their audience is and getting them the content they want. So I love your point about what is the material you're doing, and what are you wanting it to do? Now the barrier to entry is, anybody with an iPhone is a content creator. Now, is it good content? That's a whole different conversation.
Right. Alex?
Yeah, I think that as you think about the content that you want to create there, I always will come back to service and use. So what is it? How is it serving other people when you're building that content? I'm pretty mercenary about whether YouTube is selling, or buying our information or anything else. The bottom line is that there's a trade-off. It's really expensive. I started doing web video when I had to pay for the server costs, and we used you can't watch any of the old Pixel Core or DV Garage videos because we made them all in Flash, encased in QuickTime, because we couldn't afford to pay for the bandwidth. And so the thing is that and if you have a runaway hit and you're on a server, on an S3 server, you're broke. If you have a runaway hit in YouTube, you're rich. Or you're doing better. So I don't worry too much about that at all. What I do think about is what kind of content you're creating. Now, we create a certain kind of content here because we really use YouTube as an archive. We haven't really turned on any marketing engines, yet for office hours. It's been mostly us figuring out how to do all of this and how to make it all work and everything else, which we're getting very close to. But we use it as an archive, which I think it's great. It's a great place. It's easy for people to find. It's easy for people to get on. They can jump into those things. So just using it as that is a service to our community as far as making that available. Now, when you start thinking about serving people, I think that the more marketing you try to do, the more damage you do to your connection to your audience. So the more it feels like marketing in YouTube, the less valuable it is. And so the more it's just, I'm giving you information that you need. And the less you try to push it. I think that there was a culture for a while of like, hey, subscribe to my thing, like a long drawn out thing at the very beginning of join my channel, go to my Instagram, check out my Twitter, all that stuff at the very beginning. And it's a real turnoff for the viewers. Like they came to find something out, and so pretty much anything, any fluff around what they came to see is problematic, and you can put it at the end. Now, where we're going to be going with office hours is to put up lots of little things, lots of little tips, that are 2 minutes long, that are very specific, because these will take advantage of searches, so people are searching about this thing. And what we want to do is give them a very clean, like, this is what you're looking for, because like I can tell you as a user, that's what I'm looking for. I learn applications by opening one window of YouTube, and I open the application and then I just start searching for everything I need to figure out. I literally just sit there and I very quickly try to ignore anybody talking about anything other than what the title is. When the title and the search bring your video to me, it better be what you said it was, and it better get to that point really fast, or I'm going to be, thumbed down, or it used to be thumbed down, or I'll move on or whatever. I'm frustrated. you were not useful. So I think that you want to, when you think about, I think we've evolved to that. It wasn't always that way, but I think we've evolved to where the most successful videos I see are ones that are getting to the point in record time. They're not wasting any time bouncing around, and they're providing a real service. And I think that we work with a lot of clients who want to put a lot of marketing stuff on YouTube. It's kind of, I've shot a lot of those videos. I don't think that they're that. I don't think they're that effective. A lot of them have 200 views, or if they pump them up with advertising, they get them up to a lot bigger numbers. But it's not really serving the industry. Another thing to think about is call deflection. So one of the things that we've worked on in the past is building videos with that are really designed around call deflection. I'm going to show you how to fix something that's common. We had a company that we worked with that they took the 20 most common things that people called them about, and it was literally down to, they could tell you it was $12 a call. That's how much it cost them to have someone answer the phone and answer about their device, and so they were like, as long as we can get rid of $12 a call, like, and so they took the top 20 questions and they built little 5-minute videos of how to not have that happen. And when they talked about it, it was on YouTube. When they talked about it on the phone, when someone called, people would just hang up on them like, oh, I have what I need now. I don't need you anymore. And so they made sure that you knew that there were videos before you called. You can still call them. So their call volume went down in half in the first year. And so it was a marketing tool, but it paid for itself through the service end of things. So you just want to think about, and when you're serving people with these videos as a company, you're also, you're creating a better relationship, because when people know how to use your product, they're less angry with you. So being able to, you want to look at it in service in a lot of different ways, so around customer service as well as marketing.
Yeah, that's really good, because that's where like FAQs come in, and using the videos so that it will help support and reducing that friction for customers. Excellent point there, John.
First of all, Liberty, fantastic opening comments. Most important thing there is YouTube is the number 2 search engine, discoverability. So doing your SEO and your descriptions and your chapter markers are very, very important in YouTube. Now that my NDA is expired, I did all of Mike Tyson's online marketing and his YouTube. And I can tell you, for every million views that he received, we got $2,000. And YouTube categorizes their payoffs depending on what category you're in, anywhere from $500 per million all the way up to about $12,000 per million, depending on your category. Finance pays really, really high because those advertisers pay more money than everybody else. And so use Social Blade. Go find the top guys. Go look at Mr. Beast or go look at PewDiePie and see what they're doing. But most importantly, these guys have been doing it for a long time. Like Marquez Brownlee says, you got to do, 100 or 200 or 500 videos with no views before you get any traction. So good luck.
Yeah, very good point. Because even when you look at a lot of the people who are, I was in preparation for this, looking at like who are the top ones, like the Logan Pauls and the little boy who does the toy reviews. They've been on the platform upwards of 7 to 10 and plus years going at it, and reinforcing to your point, John, of like the search engine optimization. A lot of that too you've got to be testing. Like, do these keywords work? Did this topic work? And going back and forth between your analytics. So that contributes to the volume of videos that you create. Jeffrey?
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff right there. It really depends on who you're marketing to and how you're marketing. Like, for instance, I've been doing this since on YouTube since 2011. I've been doing this as a podcaster before that since 2000 on a professional level since 2007. So I didn't jump on the YouTube bandwagon right away, but because I was with a certain camp that basically said, control your content, own your content, and do your own numbers. But then, yeah, as things progress, you find that it gets harder and harder to do all on your own. So then I went to YouTube, and since then we saw a lot of a lot of analytics. The one thing that YouTube will give you more than enough of is a set of analytics of when people are stopping to watch, when people, how they watch, where they watch, all that other stuff. And if you can read all of those analytics, you can find where your problem parts are. Going to a Mr. Beast, going to Logan Paul, they usually have a team right behind them, and one person's dedicated to looking at all those analytics, and not only those analytics on YouTube, but also how those they get outside of YouTube. Because every time you're whether it's YouTube, whether it's Amazon or whatever, they want you to bring people into their walled garden. They don't want people leave the walled garden, but YouTube gives a lot of leeway, so you can have people leave as long as they come back in different ways. So there's a lot of things that I do on my shows that a lot of other people don't do. Like, for instance, you get that whole trope of, oh, subscribe to my channel and don't forget to do this and don't forget and hit that bell notification and that. And we're all numb to that. And yeah, to a level I do that, but there are things that I won't do. Like, for instance, in my shows, I won't put in a mid-roll sponsor. because I think it's tacky. I think after about 90 days, it becomes completely useless. And I've actually went back and taken out mid-roll sponsors because I used to do it at the beginning. Now that could change, if I go out to a conference or something like that, and I'm sponsored by a company, that's a different story. But for the most part, a lot of this stuff, I don't do that. So the marketing, are you coming from, I'm going from 0 to 1 million on my own, or am I coming to the point where I'm going to have brands give me thousands of dollars to sit here and talk about said product? And if that's the case, then a lot of my branding goes off to the side. And I let them deal with a lot of the marketing. I'll keep an eye on how things are going, but I will definitely make sure that I give them the best product available, because a lot of times, and you have to think of this on an evergreen basis. How does this subject look in 2 years? How does it look in 5 years? If it's expirable content, that's a different story. If you're doing news segments, you want to live for the moment. But when you're making something for long term, you really have to put some thought into what you're doing right now and how that's going to affect. And even 2 years from now, I've gone back to some videos that I did 2-3 years ago. Notice they still have traction. And take a look. We didn't have chapter markers back then. I put chapter markers in there. We didn't do hashtags back then. I put hashtags in there, and just kind of see where that's going.
Yeah, and to your point, even with adding the hashtags, to see what changes that the platform is making and how to make those adjustments with your content to better serve your audience. Chris?
Yeah, Sky started off by saying, I don't like the word content. And there's a reason why I don't like the word content. I think there's two types of successful YouTubers. There are those that turn their camera on, they have something to say, it's interesting, and they do it. And they do it because they want to say it. And then there are the people who, whereas like when some of us were kids, we said, I want to be a fireman, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a policeman. Now kids are like, I want to be a YouTuber. So like the desire is, I want to be a YouTuber. Oh, how do I do that? I need content. And so the reason why I don't like the word content is because content is the afterthought to becoming a YouTuber, right? And it's the same thing a little bit when it comes to like marketing and businesses. We want content on our YouTube channel. I love Alex's story about the call, what you call it, call reduction. I had a nightmare of that with a Samsung call deflection. So I had a nightmare with that with a Samsung subwoofer this weekend. I'll go into another time. But when the goal is to fill a channel so that I can call myself a YouTuber, that person makes content. My favorite YouTubers are the ones that are just interesting people. Now, that's not to say that the science of what Jeffrey was talking about, the analytics and when did they log off and what did I do, what did I say? It's not to say that you can't take somebody who genuinely just has something to say and polish them with the analytics or polish their performance to make them more successful. But like one of my favorite YouTubers, he's got like 1 million subs. He's just a tow truck driver, and he talks about the people that he pulls out of the sand. And I'm sure he's been coached. I'm sure he's been advised, these are better days to upload. But he started off really raw because he just had something to say. And I think it's I want to be a YouTuber. Try again, take two. It's I want to be a YouTuber, therefore I need content. That's my aversion to the word content. And I got to tell you, every time I hear that word, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Duly noted, Chris, about the word content. Noah.
So we're going to have to say content like we do Whispering with Mitch. So yeah, for me, I'm not a YouTube authority of any sort. I have two small channels that at different points I've tried to start up. And just looking back at those two channels with, sub 1,000 subscribers, if I'm honest with myself, I realized that I just haven't spent the time and dedication to make that, take off or get off the ground, so to speak. But what's interesting to me is that when I search for something on YouTube and I find Jeffrey Powers or David or David Paskin or Guy Cochran, and I see their videos, or John Barker, I'm actually more excited to watch their content because I have that personal connection because they're part of our community. So that excites me. But I also realized too, kind of what Alex was talking about, is like, I want the meat of the conversation. I think a lot of us want that too, of like getting straight to the point. Whereas a lot of other shows and videos even are less about that and more about the entertainment value that they offer. But at the end of the day, it is value, right? It comes back down to that. What are we giving value to the audience? And I think now that I've been a couple of years removed of like really taking that seriously and trying again, I think I might try that. The only thing is time. I got to figure out the time with running a business and these OH projects and all that fun stuff.
And your videos popped up in searching as well. So you make a great point there of just, what is the person, knowing what your audience is looking for. So we are a particular type, all of us OH folks. So we get to the meat, but versus as you shared, the entertainment factor, they're looking for that build up, the get ready with me, the fashion, the fashion bloggers and all of that community. Nigel?
Some people are interesting and some people are not. And it's maybe unfair to say that, but interesting people can do interesting things and say them in interesting ways, and those who are not don't. And so I think you have to be realistic, as if you can present an interesting personality, content, whatever you want to call it. I think there are two other thoughts that sort of echo things that people may have said before. One is consistency. You've got to be consistent. You've got to be on the same day at the same time, to an editorial calendar or theme that makes sense, and go really stick by that if you stand any chance of building any market or any audience yourself, and it would help if you're interesting. I think finally for businesses, I think we're all becoming a little more cynical now that YouTube and some of these other channels have become the highest paid provider, and that you can find stuff by luck. But mostly what we're presented now, be it Twitter, be it YouTube, be it Google, are things that people have paid for. And I think some of those things are going to, over time, diminish some of the platforms for people. And I think there's going to be two extremes: what's paid for on one side and what's just incredible content on the other side. And the middle is going to be hollow.
Jason, real quick.
Adam Savage is an amazing human being. He's a very practiced speaker, and he's a very interesting person. And if you've ever looked at his YouTube channel, what you'll find is he's so high energy that he can actually just go, hey, you know what? Check this out. You hear him shuffle off camera, and he just comes back and he's like, okay, let me show you this. It's really, really cool. And I'm pretty sure it's not rehearsed. It's just well practiced. There are truly interesting people. And I could watch him all day. I think he's just absolutely fantastic. He's a genuine human, and it truly shows through in anything that he does. He's just very, very good at it. The best video view count I ever did was how to cancel DirecTV. It's 18 minutes long, and I looked at it just now, and they're nearly 250,000 views. Way more than any of the produced stuff that I've ever done. So it does serve more than one purpose, and it's really just a matter of what you're out for. I, for one, am never out to be famous.
You got to the pain point. That's why. And there are a lot of people who had this similar pain that you were able to solve for them. And Jeffrey.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, and Chris, instead of content creator, maybe an idea creator would be a better term on that. But something that would create inspiration, something in some cases is formula. I mean, during the pandemic, several different YouTube channels popped up. One in particular I'm thinking of is Awkward Ashley. She's a millennial that hasn't seen movies from the 80s. So she asked her audience, what movie should I watch next? And then she sits there and she watches the movie. And then she's created a whole business off of that with a Patreon page. She's got 4 Patreons that pay $700 a month, I think it is. And they get to tell her what to watch next. So she's making a good amount of money, technically off of YouTube through the Patreon system, to watch movies and then edit. And if you watch the video, it's really not spectacular. It's not like she's using graphics. It's just basically cuts and superimpositions and trying not to get a copyright strike off the whole thing. So she's got an idea. She's creating a formula from it, and the biggest one is she's being genuine with her content. So she's creating an audience from that. And I know my wife, she watches it all the time, and there's a lot of people out there that are creating that same formula.
All right, a great discussion. Thank you, panelists, and let's get into these questions.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama comes up with our first one. Is posting weekly mandatory for growing a YouTube channel and community?
Jeffrey?
A lot of people are going to think yes, but the reality is no. If you've got a good communication system behind your channel, you can do something and not do it every single week. We had the same problem with podcasting. We had the same problem with live streaming. Everybody has to feel like they've got to do something. And yeah, there are parts in the algorithm that will take you out of the search and the next video type areas if you're not doing regular content. But if you've got people still watching your previous content and you're directing them and you're saying, hey, I've got to take this week off because I just need to clear my head. I will be back next week. And they come back next week. That's going to be more important than you putting out content and getting burned out to the point that you would be YouTube fade, just like podcast. It was a pod fade.
Sky?
Oh, there's so much good conversation going on here. So I'm kind of absolutely agreeing with Jeffrey and absolutely disagreeing at the same time, because what you're doing is establishing trust with your audience. And that is a bonding that companies spend billions of dollars establishing connection. So consequently, is it mandatory? No. Do you want an audience? That's your choice, isn't it? And are you establishing a continuity of a thing? Now, if I want to lose weight and become healthier, I should probably exercise. I should probably do something. So if you want to get stronger, do it for yourself. I'm also going to say to the previous conversation and to the next one, it's called the entertainment business. So if you want to be in business of creating, do we have a new word, Chris? You're going to have to come up with a different one. A package of information, not called content. So but what is it that you want to accomplish from this? So mandatory is not an external thing. Actually discipline is a good word because it keeps you focused and getting better and letting your audience grow with you.
Alex?
I think this has also evolved over time. I would still say, like, if you're doing a podcast, people expect a show and they expect it every week. And what we found is that if you do it more than every week, people get overwhelmed and then they stop because they're on a list that they're getting. And if they get it more than every week, they get overwhelmed and they stop listening because they like freeze it because it's too much coming in. But that's being delivered to your phone or delivered to as a service. I think that with YouTube, it's really dropped a lot. Like, people don't really follow. I know I don't follow channels like, oh, I'm waiting to see what the next thing is that they put up. What really is happening is I have a homepage, and that homepage has a bunch of things that I probably am interested in, and that includes new things that were there. So the more you put up there, the more you might end up in that homepage for people who have subscribed to you. But I don't think that I think that they used to think, oh, I'm going to wait for the Monday drop or the Tuesday drop or whatever that drop is. And I think now they're just, they're going to their homepage and they're going, oh, I wonder what Jeffrey's done, or I wonder what this person's done. They go over to it, or they get, like my family does, they binge on something specific. Our addiction right now is the daily dose of internet, which is how we close most days. Is there's usually 2 or 3 daily doses that we take, that we're slowly catching up with every one of those that have ever been made. But I think that is, you want people to binge on those things. But like I don't know when Smarter Every Day, when Destin puts up his stuff. But I do know that about once a week I go look at stuff that I haven't seen and kind of browse through it. If I feel like just taking a break for a minute, I'm like, I wonder how I could be smarter today. Because I know when I go to his channel, I will be smarter at the end of that, of whatever he's going to put up. So,
Chris?
It's interesting. I would kind of disagree. It's not about a show. In my opinion, podcasting, like YouTubing, at least the stuff I like, it's about a relationship. I don't choose to call my friends every Tuesday morning at 8:00 and say, "Hey, how you doing?" When I miss that friend, or I want to get caught up, or I just want to hang out, or I just want to swing by Bob's house and say, "Hey, hop in the car, we're going to the lumberyard together," which I did this weekend. We never made it to the lumberyard. That's how you relate with friends. And if you're building a relationship, which was my whole thing when I was podcasting, I felt that the relationship was the main thing. I wanted to be friends with the audience, and what it meant was that they trusted my opinion more than, all right, let's take a break and I'm going to do this ad here, because it's not a show. If it's good, and maybe it is a show. I don't know.
What I found though is I've done, started and stopped and handed off many podcasts over the last, 15 years. And the thing that I found though is that if with a podcast, if you don't produce every week, people get frustrated and they unsubscribe. They literally, it's an unfulfilled expectation, and then they just go, I don't want to do this anymore.
Because you're being a bad friend. That's what it is. You're literally being a bad friend.
You said you were coming over every Monday, and then
yes,
you didn't. Exactly.
Yeah, where are you?
Exactly.
Because podcasting is different than YouTubing, because the typical podcast, audio only podcast, most people listen to it alone in the car, alone while they're doing dishes, alone while they're mowing the lawn. It's a very intimate thing. Yeah. And so it's a one-way relationship, because that person they've come to enjoy your voice, or enjoy your humor, or enjoy your opinions. And then you just don't show up. Yeah. And you've crushed
without explanation.
And I got to tell you, it's
crushed that relationship.
It's by hours. You have to just choose when you're going to publish. And we learned to publish to the minute, because a couple minutes after whatever the average was, you start getting pings like, "Hey, what happened?"
All right, we're talking about audio podcasts. Let's go back.
I know, but I kid you not, 10 minutes after,
I get it.
Are you going to do this anymore? Is this going to happen anymore? There's somebody waiting. And so anyway, but with YouTube, I just don't feel like that's the same relationship. I feel like it is a different, I feel like you just kind of see stuff come up. I don't know when anybody at YouTube publishes anything.
There are 3 YouTube channels that I know within an hour of when they're going to publish, and I look for them. So there you go. Some people do, some people don't.
Yeah, it's contingent on audience and industry. Jeffrey.
And it also depends on the content. I'll give you a couple examples. First of all, if you do news, if that's what your channel is about, is talking about the news in whatever way, shape, or form, you better be on every week or every day, or however you publish your content. If a lot of podcasters will do TV show podcasts, like a lot of them, we'll get the Marvel stuff out of the way. We'll just a regular TV show that's out there, like Grey's Anatomy or something like that. They'll do a show about Grey's Anatomy, but there's only 21 to 24 episodes per year. And then what's after that? So they either have to think to themselves, well, do I do content that's kind of looking back at what they're doing, find little Easter eggs or anything like that? Or do I just kind of let it go for the summer and then come back? Because there's a lot of people that still do that. They'll do the 24 shows, and then they'll take the rest of the year to do something else, and then they'll come back, as long as, once again, they're communicating to their audiences saying, "Hey, we will be back at this time." Perfect example, though, is Mark Rober. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's the glitter bomb guy. And he just put out a video, Pranks Destroy Spam Callers Glitter Bomb Payback. That was 2 weeks ago. That garnered 33 million views on YouTube. The video he has before that was Robot Piano Catches Fire. That was 2 months ago and got 17 million views. And then 5 months ago, he did the world's largest t-shirt cannon. And as you can see, there is no consistency to what he's doing, but he's getting the numbers, because I don't know if I'm assuming he's not putting any money behind it, because when I found out about the pranks, the latest one, it was actually through another website that wrote a whole article on what he was doing. So it's really about the content that you're trying to deliver and how that can come back. Because Mark's one of the top YouTubers out there, and he's not doing content every single week.
Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama. What is the formula to market your YouTube channel? What is the recommended steps for a starting channel?
Sky?
As of right now, yes, there are formulas, and you want to do a thing that repeats and you find success from that. But understand, for Matt in the kitchen anyway, that YouTube was where we were driving our audience to, so that we could stay connected with them via video. So we would use our Instagram to say, and follow us on Instagram, on watch the full video on YouTube. So it was just a part of the overall marketing scheme of getting your audience to that location. So that was our formula that we chose.
Alex?
I haven't followed this rule very well, but being relatively consistent about the kind of things that you cover. I think when I get into someone's YouTube channel and they're doing something dramatically different than what they did before, I oftentimes disengage really quickly. Like, I'm just like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. So I think that, usually if I'm going to do something dramatically different, I use a different page to do it. That said, the most viewed thing on my YouTube channel is a margarita machine. Nothing to do with graphics. It was me testing a camera. It was the video part of it is I was testing a camera, and it was the first time I ever shot video with a Canon Mark II, 5D Mark II, and so I was just seeing if I could make it work. And there's a whole bunch of problems with it, but that's why I put it up. It's still got more views than anything else I've done.
And Eduardo,
like margaritas.
So good. It was so good.
I'd be curious as to if you're saying market it like off of YouTube, or for an example, and there's a best practices list here of just some of the things to optimize your current channel and some of the keywords and whatnot. But if you are Jeffrey just made a point when he gave that example of, I think it was Mark, you said, Jeffrey, that you found the video from a blog. Like, that's where a great way of like, where else can you place your content that will direct people back to your channel? So whether that be blogs, whether that be collaborating with other YouTubers, so that you can just bring some of those eyeballs over to your audience. Jeffrey?
And I will give you another example here, because I have a few different YouTube channels out there. Geekazine's the one I always publish on, and the last couple of years, a lot of the content that I do on Geekazine includes going out to conferences. So I didn't put too much content out there. I did do virtual conference stuff, but it was a lot tougher for me to do what I did, and really made me think about how I would have to retune my channel if we ended up in a place where I ended up staying at home a lot. But I have another channel that is basically, we're going to do content when the brand gives us money to do content. And that's all we're doing. And I know that there's many people out there that are doing brand deals for content. And when they do that, they will make a mass marketing plan from there. They'll go out to the Promotas and even the Fivers, for that matter, and they'll put thousands of dollars down to make sure that those videos will be seen by people that will end up writing blogs about it, that will end up telling their friends about it, because they just need that content to go out there. They don't expect their Twitterverses to come to their channel. They expect to let the money do the talking in that aspect. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? No, it really depends on the content that you're putting out there and how you want people to see it. Because, the other channel I'm talking about, if I put it in here, you guys would probably gloss over. And it doesn't make sense for you to see it in my feed every single week unless it matters to you what that content is. Plus, the fact we don't do it on a regular basis is more important. That, I don't want you to be bombarded by me saying, come to this channel, and there's absolutely nothing there, because that's by design.
Right. And that, to what Jeffrey just said too, is like ads actually paying, because a lot of time people just think of YouTube organically. No, you can actually put some dollars and some ad spend behind what you are trying to promote. Next question.
Next one again comes from Eduardo Augustine in Panama, and he says, news leading to subs. What are your thoughts, and what is the set of steps to create a healthy YouTube channel?
We're going to speed through some of these questions. Jeffrey?
really quick. It's a lot of it is about what's being said on there to create subs, and you see a lot of YouTubers say, "Hey, follow me, subscribe." Make sure that they want that sub count so they can turn around and say they have that sub count, and of course, so people can see on the feeds. And it's important for some, but once again, you can. It's a drug, is what it is, and you can follow that drug. And then when you see one person unsubscribe, and they might not unsubscribe, they might have just their channel might have been taken off, they might have closed out their channel, and then all of their videos that all the subscribers they were following are gone. But that you could take that very negatively, and that can really get into your brain. So doing the sub thing is not one of the things I recommend.
Sky?
Historically, we used to have the Nielsen ratings, which would capture who's watching the TV shows and who's watching the ads. And that way the TV channel could say, we have this many eyeballs watching us. So, hey, Geico, if you buy ad time on ours, we will put your information in front of this many eyeballs. And so subs is a marketing concept of saying what your value is to a potential marketing or person that wants to advertise.
Alex?
Yeah, the primary use for subs for most of our clients is the fact that the notifications go out to the subscribers. So subscribers are more likely to see it on their homepage. They're more likely to get a notification when you go live, when you post a new video. So it will implicitly affect the number of views for each one of things. So if you just have a lot of views on one video and not a lot of subs, you're not going to necessarily you can't build a guarantee. Once you get to a certain number of subs, you're pretty sure you're going to get X number of views as a fraction of that if you're producing good content. So that's the big advantage of trying to drive subscriptions, is that the notifications will increase the overall number of views.
Next question.
Next one comes from Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. He says, Jeffrey Powers, do you have goals around your channel? And if so, what do you recommend to newer, less established channels?
Jeffrey?
1 million subscribers. No, for me, it's I like I said, I don't go for that. I don't go for the white whales. I'm not in it. It'd be nice to hit 100,000 eventually. I go for content that I can talk about technology and focus on going out and talking to people and learning about new products and just stuff like that. So the biggest thing is find the one or two things that can really that you can really talk about and you feel comfortable around, and then follow that, and don't go, like I said, don't go for the subs, don't go for the money and talking about a product that you've never seen before, or a topic that you have no idea. I'll never talk about politics because I have no idea. I'll never talk about basket weaving either because I have no idea how to do it. So stick to those lanes. You'll be good.
Yeah. So basically niching down, finding that space where that you can talk about it and own it. Next question.
Todd Rains, Allen, Texas, up next. He says, how come live chat is not showing on my live stream replays?
Alex?
I think this is a new setting that I've noticed that we've noticed that live chat is turned off in the back end, and it seems to be turned off by default. So even if there was live streaming there, so you want to look at the back end of that content, go into content live, and I believe there's a setting there now that is the bit is flipped by default to off, and we noticed that in the last little bit. I turn a lot of chat off in general, so I don't notice it as much because the first thing I tend to do, because I have Mukana, we tend to turn the chat off on YouTube because it's a lot of garbage a lot of the time. Anyway.
Next question.
Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. Next, Discord seems to be the community add-on for YouTube communities by default almost. What tools has everyone used to manage this interaction?
Sky.
Facebook is the original lowest barrier to entry, and my house of worship people that gather on a Sunday that wanted to stay connected, again, they were most familiar with Facebook. They were not teenagers doing video games, so Discord was not in their world. So it was a yes and of YouTube that was posted up on Facebook. And how do I get to it?
Alex?
Yeah, the big thing, the big advantage of Discord is that you just have a lot more tools. You have a lot more at your disposal of how you manage your community, how you process the community, the types of threads that you have. The hardest part with Facebook groups or anything else is just that it's a very blunt object, and so it really blunts the kind of conversation and community that you can build. So we obviously spend a lot of time in Discord as far as office hours go, and I think that we would have much less of a community if we had focused on Facebook or any other platform to kind of build a community around.
Next question.
Next question, Douglas Carmichael's up next. As a content consumer, what advantages does YouTube Premium bring me?
Ads, no ads. Yeah. limited ads. Sorry, Alex.
No ads. Like it's as a premium user, no ads is a big deal. Once you get used to not having it, like everyone, I have a lot of YouTube accounts. And when I accidentally log into the wrong one and it shows up with doesn't have YouTube Premium, I am like, what happened? Like, this is horrible. Like, how can anyone watch this? And so Premium is worth every penny. It just, once you get used to not having those ads, it's really hard to go back. And I have to admit, as a consumer, I have almost no interaction with ads on a daily basis, except for like web ads that I barely ever pay attention to.
Jeffrey?
And not only with ads, but also there are two other things. Music is one thing that YouTube really wants you to get into. And then, of course, downloading the content. A lot of people don't realize this, but you could, if you're going to get on a plane or a train or anywhere that doesn't have Wi-Fi access, you can actually pre-download some of the content if you're a premium subscriber, and then have it as a playlist so you can watch it on the go.
Noah.
Yeah, I think I was really stubborn about this for a long time of like, oh, I don't want to pay for that, or I don't want to pay for Spotify or this or that. And then I realized, like, how much is my time worth? Like, what's the value of my time? And not listening to a bunch of ads, is a value to me, and it gives me value. So that's why it's worth doing.
I always find this so hard. I always toggle back and forth because I need to look at the ads for clients to kind of see what others are doing. But I might be pulling the plug soon. Next question.
Cindy Drozla in Erie, Colorado says, what are your thoughts on monetizing videos on YouTube?
Sky?
Cindy, I think you should just point a camera due west of your house from over the boulder up into the mountains there. And I think you'd have a great opportunity to monetize on YouTube. It's not what it used to be. I first really followed what has become the term influencer, Casey Neistat, when he was doing this dozen years ago. And he was able to make a lot of money from YouTube directly, but then YouTube started saying, no, we're not going to do it. Many of these other multi-million-dollar producers of content are now making their income from other locations and using YouTube as the platform of distribution, as their stage, but they're making their money from all kinds of other ways. I'd love to hear that, Liberty. What are the other ways people are making money?
I was going to say that's the only way to really survive, because it's gotten so vast. I guess it's just all the content that's out there. But yes, those brand deals, and I'm crossing fingers that I get a couple influencers to come on next week so we can talk about influencer marketing and how they're able to do that. But yeah, the brands, the teaching, the courses, like you see them for those who don't have YouTube Premium, so that where people are just looking for other ways. And Patreon has been mentioned a number of times already. Jeffrey?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, my YouTube channel actually pays a couple bills, so I'm good with that. It's a nickel dime game. If you really think of it that way, then you find that one video that you did 2 years ago, all of a sudden hits, and then next thing you know, you get a ton of views. When I used to go out to the Ford events, I used to get a ton of views off of that, and therefore any type of advertising, any type of mid-roll that happened during that was great. And I didn't even have to think about it. And I came from Blip TV, which was the precursor to YouTube actually doing payments on YouTube. I think they kind of stole it from Blip TV, but that's a different story for a different time. But then when all of us moved on to YouTube, and some went to MCNs because they could get better rates, and then those MCNs failed. Multi-channel network is what an MCN is. And then those MCNs failed, and then they came back to YouTube. But once again, we find that it pays a couple bills, but then you do need some other supplements. So affiliates on Amazon, for example, or through Walmart, or through other types of means, going to some of these programs where you could actually call up an ad, so you can do a mid-roll and say, hey, buy this product, use my code whatever, and get 20% off. And then, of course, promoting things. Even if you write a book, write an ebook, and then promote that. Even if you're giving away for free, that becomes promotion from there, and that puts you on a path to getting more and more as you're nickel and diming the whole thing. And then, of course, brand deals do come your way. It gets pretty easy after a while.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that if you're in a niche, I think that it's really hard to make money doing it. So I think that you're better off building that relationship with your viewers until you can start thinking about it when you have real numbers, of followers. But unless you're measuring in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of, you're going to have a hard time, making a living at it. I mean, you might make a little bit of extra money, but I think that looking at what you do, Cindy, I think that you're better off using YouTube as a way to build a relationship with folks that might be interested in what you do, because you do something pretty interesting, wood turning. So I think that people ending up in your classes, buying your products, those are the things that you're going to generate revenue from before you, and not, and running ads into the middle of it kind of cheapens the content.
And Chris?
Cindy, I don't know if you realize this, but I have a wildly successful YouTube channel, and I could probably buy both of us a sandwich with all of the money that I've made off of the AdSense. I mean, not a nice sandwich, but a cheap sandwich. I personally, I get it. There's a total way to make money. I found a couple of years ago when they started to tighten the screws on, various things, I'd literally just turn my stuff to not for kids. It's just easier. I just go, not for kids. You can't watch this. Boop a doop boom. Because I'm not trying. I personally am not trying to get a lot of views or anything like that. I put stuff up for friends, and as a matter of fact, one of the things I've been doing mostly lately is I put it as a unlisted, because I'm just sending links to family members. I'm not very good at YouTube.
It serves the purpose that you're using it for. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, how can you build community around your content with younger audiences without running afoul of COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and similar laws?
Alex?
Very carefully. It's almost not worth doing. The COPPA issues are vast. So I would be very, very careful with it. You have to start checking off the little mark that says this is, intended for children. And then there's a whole bunch of restrictions in process. Unless you really, this is the only market you can get into, and you're ready to, brace for impact of how complicated it'll be to make it work. Don't do it. Don't target anyone under 13.
Next question.
Jason Panks, Nashville, Tennessee. Thoughts on chapter markers versus timestamps for videos?
Jeffrey, real quick.
Technically, this is one and the same. The one thing that chapter markers do, and don't follow the office hours model, because we're really not using chapter markers the way that we should. The idea is to create a short, quick explanation of what's happening in this area, so it can be searchable. In fact, if you do a regular, not a YouTube search, but a Google search, and you say, how do I tighten find these 3 bolts on this engine or whatever, you might come up, the first answer might come up where they actually point you not only to a video, but the specific point in the video where that chapter marker started, to let you know that's where you have to go to find that specific piece of information.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, Twitch has made the chat experience a unique selling point of the platform. Do you think YouTube streamers can build community around their streams with the chat experience YouTube provides?
Jeffrey.
There's many that do that. And with some of the chat features, there's what's called super chats. They can actually make some money off of it. But you also got to watch out, because the trolls can come out really quick.
Good point. Alex?
Yeah, some people make money at it. It generally is just a giant mess. Like the Twitch, and Twitch is not that much better for real, interaction and conversation. You just end up in a situation, as soon as you get popular, you attract flies, and not good ones and not nice ones, but just, you kind of pull up. There's we tend to refer to it as the Balrog. As soon as you get to a certain level of success, you you dig too deep and something fiery and ugly comes out of it, and that usually looks like trolls. So I think it's very difficult to be successful with the chat and even the comments.
Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. Does Office Hours have a YouTube marketing strategy, and what does that look like?
Alex.
Yeah, so we're mostly, again, what we're doing right now is just getting good at this, just practicing it, getting better at the edit system, getting better at what we do here and how we manage it in the back end. So we're not trying to really market it that much, other than people really wanted to have some record somewhere. So this seemed like the least expensive, easiest way to do it. So I think that that's where we're at the moment. The real marketing strategy will be to do exactly what we've done in the past, which is or what I've talked about in the past, which is to lots of small pieces of content that are useful for people. So I'm going to start doing some over the summer, and then hopefully other people will want to join in and do some little tips. But we're going to build highly structured, small tips of how to do specific things. I'm going to play with it and try to figure out a model for it. But I think that having lots of things that are useful to our community in the areas, verticals that we're interested in, is the best way for us to expand what we're doing.
Next question.
Cindy Drozda in Erie is back with, I do live streams now. Since they're free to view, I do minimal prep and is somewhat spontaneous. Any advice on guidelines to success in live streaming? My goal is to get new customers and keep old ones.
Jeffrey?
The best thing to do is to keep a structure. If you start, treat it like a regular show. So we're going to do this for the first 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be specific, but we're going to do this for this small period of time. And then we'll focus on this for just even Office Hours does that. First hour, we talk about general Q&A. Second hour, we have a subject. We also do the countdown timers and having fun little things like that are easy to do, and you can put that into your show. If that gets a little bit too technical for you, that's fine. You don't need to do that. But just fun little things, being able to stop and let people catch up a little bit. And then, of course, once again, the chapter markers. The one thing that you can do with a chapter marker is they actually take those and they'll put those little bite-sized pieces of content. I can go back into the live stream after it's done, find a spot, and then go into YouTube stories if you have that part of YouTube. And of course, if you have the right amount of subscribers, you do have that part where you can say, hey, watch this part. This is where I talk about this. I'm going to talk, and then kind of deep dive on that little part. And a lot of times they'll start watching it and then they'll end up watching the whole rest of the video from there. But structure is probably the most important thing, and being able to do it again and again and again, practicing your openings and your closings so you're not umming and ahhing as you're going.
And Alex?
Yeah, the hardest part about social media networks is that if you don't put a lot of effort into it because it's free, you'll never get anywhere. So, the hard part is that you have to put effort. I mean, almost everybody, or probably everybody that's successful on YouTube, put a lot of, if they came from nothing, if they didn't have a TV or radio or something else to promote it, and they didn't put a lot of effort into it, even when it was free. They just didn't get anywhere because it's just not very high quality, and people move on. And the level that you have to play at is much higher today than it was 10 years ago to get in, because there's a lot of people shooting with great content. So I would recommend doing more prep, and really thinking about how, and working with us in after hours, like jump into after hours and do your live stream with us and get feedback of this looked good, this didn't look good. And if you're not ready to do that, then it may not be, doing it halfway may be just wasting all of your time, because you're not going to get a lot of viewers, and you're also just going to put a lot of effort into it that isn't, even the half effort isn't going to get you anywhere. So I would recommend thinking about playing pretty hard or not doing it at all.
And Sydney, I just took a quick look at a quick Google search, and I wish that we had more time. So we'll have to come back and do some SEO stuff, but just putting your name in and seeing what searches come up, it might be helpful to do some SEO research and seeing what other topics that your audience would be looking for, and creating content around that. And to the point about the prep, even seeing here, people that your download, people are looking for the content that you already have. So, and you have a great niche. I think about during the pandemic, that's when I was trying to build, people were building and all of that. So you have a great opportunity to grow with all of the feedback that has already been shared. Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. Do you think parts of society still has a stigma toward content creators, and should we do anything about that?
Bill?
I think they have a stigma about bad content creators, and there's the internet has been awash in those. And I'm not being really facetious about this. I mean, when you think about the fact that how many videos get put up daily, we've all seen those statistics, and out of it, none of us think that more than maybe a fraction of 1% are really worth our time over and over again. No single human can watch more than a half of a small basis point of those videos. So in that environment, until some of the fall off takes place, we've got a world of television with bad stuff on out there, and you've got to find those 1 little or 2 little or a quarter of 1% that makes good sense to watch.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that are looking for social media influencers, and so I don't think that there's that much stigma among at least marketers. I mean, that's usually one of the first things we get asked is how do we get some social folks, that are going to be part of the event, because people have realized that a lot of their online events aren't viable without influencers involved.
And Jeffrey?
And it's most important to think that, or realize that there's, even on this panel, we have 12 different people that have different thoughts and different ideas. I might watch somebody that is more down to earth, like Liberty, if you were to explain what the iPhone was, instead of something like a Marcus Brownlee, because even though he's a little bit more down to earth and probably not the best example, that I feel like I'd get that connection, as Chris said, get that connection with Liberty more than I would with Marcus, or with watching the news. Maybe somebody likes that whole news structure, and so Lester Holt or something like that, if they were explaining what the iPhone was, it would kind of click into their head. And so it's really different people, different ideas, and different points of view.
And next question.
Rob Collins for our last one from Kansas City, Missouri says, how many ads can a single YouTube video have in it before you start losing viewers?
Alex?
1. Like you it only takes 1. Like every ad is like a knife to your viewership. So it's so you decide it's the necessary evil to pay for what you're doing, but it's a necessary evil, and every time you add one, you're going to affect your viewership. So you just have to know that you that's the cost of doing that. So
Another fantastic show. Thank you so much, producers, for all of your wonderful questions. To our panelists, thank you. Be sure to head over into After Hours, because we have Bo Cordell talking to us about what he's been working on with NFT. So if you're interested, definitely join us. And to learn more about the schedule for the week, head over to officehours.global, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Whispering began. Hi, Mitchell.
How you doing?
Somebody came up with the single sentence to offend as many people as possible. Content final. I like to name my files content.final.generic.final. .final.
Like and subscribe.
.generic notification.
I want to be a content influencer.
YouTube.content.final. 2.
That's just
hybrid.
No, it's 2.final.3.generic.test.final.
We should have a contest who has I win a screenshot of the worst file name sent to me.
Oh, I got it somewhere. I'll find it. I wrote it myself.
V12.
Final.
I've never seen so many faces look like they just, bit into a lemon.
It hurts because it's true.
Isn't it the truth?